Now, you've all seen it by now. Cabinet Minister Lucy Powell is under pressure to resign tonight as leader of the House of Commons. She described the rape gang scandal, a scandal involving the systematic abuse of thousands of girls, predominantly white British girls, as a dog whistle on Radio 4's Any Questions.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, OK.
There was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we? Yeah.
Oh, it just gets worse every time I hear it, and I've heard it about 100 times now. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has now joined calls for her to step down, accusing her of belittling the victims and brushing off one of the most horrific failures in modern British policing. And earlier on GB News, Health Secretary Wes Streeting was put on the spot by Camilla Tominey.
Said what she said to Tim Montgomery. That wasn't the right response to fair and reasonable points he was making. Well, because she's human and we make mistakes, and I've been in those debate formats before where sometimes in the heat of debate you say something that you didn't mean, or it comes across in a way that you didn't intend, and you really wish you'd rather not have said it. I think it's a sincere apology. I was in touch with Lucy last night. I think she's genuinely sorry.
Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by former Detective Constable and the founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation, Maggie Oliver herself. Maggie, good evening. Thanks for your company. You are, of course, a Rochdale grooming gang's whistleblower, a pivotal person in this whole scandal. Do you accept her apology and her retraction, Lucy Powell?
You know what, Ben? I think it just verbalises the contempt that I've witnessed successive governments have towards so-called grooming gang victims. You know, it's insensitive, it's insulting, it's dismissive, and I have witnessed for the past 20 years, actually, but most definitely for the past 13 years, many politicians not give this issue the respect and the action that it needs. So the fact that she said this, I don't think surprises anybody. You know, I've tried to inform and educate the country over the past 10, 12 years, but now I'm calling really for action. And, you know, Lucy Powell is just another example of somebody in a high place who doesn't understand the life-destroying trauma that, having been ignored and blamed by the establishment, that all victims of sexual abuse feel when they're ignored and abandoned in the way that these children were.
But Maggie, why don't people like Lucy Powell get it? They've had many years, as you've said, to understand the story. We had a recent resurgence of the scandal in recent months. We had court documents and witness statements from some of the trials doing the rounds on social media. They've had plenty of opportunity to get their head around it. What's the problem? Why doesn't Lucy Powell get it?
You know, I've asked myself this many, many times, Ben, and I think that there's been a whole combination of reasons. It's unavoidable to know that the ethnicity of the offenders and the ethnicity of the children that have been abused is a part of this. I think that the attitudes towards the children are that they didn't matter. They, you know, they're seen as in some ways as an underclass, especially on the cases that I've worked on. And, you know, I always say, if it was somebody like Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer's daughter who was raped like this, we would have seen action many years ago. But I think that the time for talking has long gone. You know, I've started a campaign with other survivors called #TheyKnew, where we are working with a team of lawyers and barristers to criminally bring those at the top of our public institutions to justice through a private prosecution or civil action, because it's very clear to me that politicians, the government, don't want to take action. You know, we've still not had the 20 ICSA recommendations implemented. I issued the government with a threat or a judicial review in January. They committed to publish a timeline for implementing these by Easter. We still haven't seen it. So, you know, Lucy Powell saying this for me, she's made a horrendous mistake, because what she's done, she's lifted the veil on what people in the House of Commons actually think. when they are talking behind closed doors about these cases, they are hoping that it will fizzle away and, you know, people like me, people who are blowing that whistle repeatedly, will just shut up and go away and do nothing. That's not going to happen anymore, Ben, because the country will demand action. We are.
I'll bring my panel in just a second, but Maggie, before I do, and if they want to ask you a question, I hope that's OK with you. Do you think Lucy Powell should resign or be sacked?
You know what, for me, this is a deflection from the real issues. I actually don't care because many of them are as bad as each other. So she will go and somebody else will come in who has the same disrespect and disdain for victims. And for somebody to say that after that programme on Channel 4 last Wednesday shows the lack of the lack of humanity, actually, that you could even make a comment like that. So for me, she's a person who doesn't have humanity or integrity or even the most basic understanding of what these children have lived through. And she's let herself down as much as everybody, as the victims.
OK, my panel's back with me. Will Kingston, Chloe Dobbs and Bill Rammell. Who wants to go first? Do you have a question, Chloe?
Yeah, sure. So Lucy Powell's comments were absolutely vile and unacceptable, but I think that what also is absolutely horrendous is Keir Starmer's silence on your documentary, which speaks absolute volumes. And I'm just wondering, Maggie, why do you think that Keir Starmer is dead silent about your documentary that's just come out, yet was talking about adolescents non-stop, had them visit Downing Street and says it needs to be shown in all schools? Why is he so silent about your documentary?
Well, I spoke in January about this because, in my opinion, he is complicit. You know, when I worked on the Rochdale job, he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. And on that case, I saw one of the girls that I was supporting who had given me hours of evidence. You know, she was made pregnant when she was 13. Her abuser we had the fetus DNA. Her abuser went to prison. He was out in in just over 3 years.
Yeah.
As Director of Public Prosecution, in my opinion, there is no doubt that he knew what charges were being brought. And so for me, if he starts to, scratch the surface of this, where is he going to hide? He also accused victims and people like me, whistleblowers, of being far-right extremists. And,
OK, well, Maggie...
Sorry?
Sorry to interrupt. We're just quite pushed for time, but I'm going to get Bill Rammell in. He wants to have a quick chat with you on this. Maybe, Bill, you can, I don't know, defend...
Look, I've known Lucy Powell for years. She's a good, decent woman. I think she was trying to make a if you watch the whole of the programme, she was making a point there's not a choice to be made between diversity and inclusion and tackling the grooming gangs. She did it wrongly, she did it badly, and she regrets it, and she's fallen on her sword in that sense. But I have to say, Maggie, your attack on Keir Starmer is really unjustified. When he was Director of Public Prosecutions, look, I come on this programme, I'll criticise the government when it's wrong, but Keir's track record as Director of Public Prosecutions in transforming the prosecution service to take this issue seriously, publicly saying as long ago as 2012 that there had been a conspiracy of silence within too many professions about the grooming gangs because they were fearful of criticising people from a black and minority ethnic background. You know, he transformed the prosecutorial guidelines so that prosecutions can actually be brought. So I think that criticism is unfair. What further really concerns me is this is hugely, hugely important, and we need to get on with tackling the issue so that people can have their cases reviewed. That's why the audit that's been commissioned by the government is so important, to get to the detail and the ethnicity of people involved, but also making it clear that it becomes a criminal offence to cover up any report of child sexual abuse. Yep. That's at the core of this.
OK, Maggie, last word to you before we go.
You know what, I apologise if this sounds rude, but you're politicising an issue that has affected thousands of lives. And, you say that to the little girl that bumped into her abuser in Rochdale Asda when he'd been released from prison, didn't even know he was out of prison. So, I've heard Keir Starmer's words and promises. I have yet to see action. And, another inquiry, some more words from him won't change the fact that he still hasn't implemented at least the 20 recommendations from ICSA, and they don't go far enough. So I'm sorry, I disagree with you. And I think what you've just said is actually the key to this. You are making this a political football. It would be easy to act on those recommendations, and yet he chooses not to do.
The government is acting on those recommendations, and with respect, Maggie, you are politicising this as well.
No, I'm not.
Bill. That's
I'm
wrong.
speaking on behalf of
Absolutely
the victims
wrong.
that I speak to every day. I don't care if it's Conservatives or Labour, they've all failed. The Conservatives equally as badly as Keir Starmer, all those years they were in office. So
in Maggie's defence, the very first thing Maggie said was consecutive governments of all colours, something akin to that.
Yeah.
I reject.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's absolutely wrong.
Since we've been in power, we've changed the law so that, it is now a criminal offence not to report child sexual abuse. And that's a huge step forward.
Even if they report child sexual abuse, they shouldn't have to be told to if they're a head teacher or a police officer who takes it should be prosecuting those offenders. The other aspect of that is there aren't enough police officers. The courts have got 4 years wait for a trial. I would suggest that you look more deeply at what's going on in the whole of the criminal justice system, because it's actually on its knees and it's broken.
OK. Maggie, thank you very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate your company on this, this issue which you've been a stalwart on. So thank you, Maggie, and we'll catch up soon. That was former Detective Constable and founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation. Lucy Powell has, of course, released a statement in reaction to what happened yesterday. She said, in the heart of a discussion on any questions, I would like to clarify that I regard issues of child exploitation and grooming with the utmost seriousness. I'm sorry if this was unclear. I was challenging the political point scoring around it, not the issue itself. And as a constituency MP, I've dealt with horrendous cases. This government is acting to get to the truth and to deliver justice. And reports today suggest that Downing Street have accepted Powell's apology and her explanation that her comments did not reflect her views on the issue. On the issue of grooming gangs, a government spokesperson has previously stated the grooming scandal was one of the greatest failures in our country's history, with vulnerable young people let down time and time again. We fully support police investigations and independent inquiries to get answers.